Ladies and gentlemen, if we could please be seated. I've just been notified we have met the quorum requirements. Before we get started, I was asked by the Board of Select Boards if they could acknowledge the hard work and effort of several people.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Mitch Cohen, Chair of the Northborough Select Board. As a lot of people know, legally the Board of Selectmen, or the Select Board now, and School Committee are somewhat separate entities, and when we went through and figured out who we should thank, who were leaving from service, we forgot some school committee members. So I want to make sure to thank Aaron Tagliaferri, who is leaving the school committee after 3 years. Going back to last year, Keith LaBelle left after 6 years, and we forgot to thank him. And going a couple more back from that, Susan Lawrence also served for 6 years on the school committee. And somehow we forgot to thank her too. So thank you very much to all three of those people. Very good. One additional brief introduction. Over here to my right, sitting up here, is our interim town administrator, Bob Reed, who will be with us for the next few months while we look for a permanent replacement to John Kader, who's gone to Foxborough. And the last thing I want to mention is I think there's a flyer out there for, it says Meet the Developer Open House. The developer that's proposing a housing project for the White Cliffs building is going to be at Town Hall a week from Wednesday on May 3rd from 5:15 to 6:45. That's a presentation they're doing. It's not a Board of Selectmen meeting or anything like that. If you have any interest, pro, con, or indifferent, but are curious, I encourage you to attend that and ask some questions and get some good information. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Just as a recollection, when last we met, we had just finished discussing Article 40. So let's commence with Article 41, and that is Zoning Bylaw Section 7-03-05. Anthony Zeiton.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I move the town to amend Part 7 of the Northborough Town Code, the Northborough Zoning Bylaw, Section 7-03-050, Special Permit with Site Plan Approval, Paragraph D1, by deleting the text shown in strike-through and adding the text shown as underlined as set forth in the warrant.
Motion has been made and seconded. Mr. Zeiton, your presentation, please.
Despite the fact that the Zoning Board of Appeals has the authority to grant site plan approval for projects when they are also the special permit granting authority, they have not yet developed or adopted rules and regulations specifying submittal requirements and review procedures. The Planning Board has adopted rules and regulations for the site plan approval that the Zoning Board of Appeals feels are both comprehensive and well-written. Approval of this article would enable the Zoning Board of Appeals to use the Planning Board's rules and regulations for site plan approval instead of going through the time and expense of creating their own duplicative rules and regulations.
Thank you. May I hear the recommendation from the Planning Board, please?
I'm sorry. Unanimous approval by the Planning Board.
Thank you. And in my notes, it indicates that the Municipal Code and Bylaw Committee voted in support of this 3-0. Any discussion or debate on Article 41? Hearing none, this is what we're voting on. I move the town vote to amend Part 7 of the Northborough Town Code, the Northborough Zoning Bylaw, Section 7-03-050, Special Permit with Site Plan Approval, Paragraph D1, by deleting the text shown in strike-through and adding the text shown as underlined, as set forth in the warrant. This is a 2/3 vote. All those in favor, please raise your cards. And those in opposition. I declare that Article 41 passes by the required 2/3 vote. Article 42, Zoning Bylaw, Section 7-05-02, Classification of Uses, Paragraph C4C. Mr. Zeiton.
Mr. Moderator, I move the town vote to amend Part 7 of the Northborough Town Code, the Northborough zoning bylaw, Section 705020, special permit with the site plan approval, paragraph C4C, by deleting the text shown in strike-through and adding the text shown as underlined as set forth in the warrant.
Motion has been made and seconded. Mr. Zeig.
This warrant places a more reasonable size limit on accessory dwellings. As currently written, the bylaw enables construction of a very large detached accessory dwelling, essentially a second single-family home, when built on a parcel occupied by an existing large home, containing a gross floor area of 4,000 square feet or more. By eliminating the maximum size allowance of 25% of the gross floor area of the existing home and setting the maximum gross floor area at 800 square feet, the accessory dwelling unit will be a more reasonable size and truly accessory to the main house. This was unanimously voted approved by the planning board. Oh, sorry, yep. And there is a special insert with the language change in your booklet in the orange sheet.
And in my notes, it indicates that the Municipal Code and Bylaw Committee was in support of this article with a vote of 3-0. Any discussion or debate on Article 2?
Yes.
One moment, please. I misread the information on Article 42. The Municipal Code and Bylaw Committee voted unanimously not to support Article 42 as presented. Now, any discussion, any debate on Article 42? Microphone 1.
Yes, Doug Stone, 33 Birch Hill Road. I'm in support of this bill. I think that it was a privilege that we had this allowed, mostly in the northern part of town. And as I think Anthony states, that the idea is not to create another family dwelling, but to have the true use of it as an accessory, primarily for relatives, I believe. Is that the intent, Anthony?
Yes,
Yeah.
mainly for, parents, kids, and that sort of thing.
Yeah. And I mean, we just have to decide, what kind of town we want to have here. Do we want to keep adding to our school system and adding extra municipal strain on our services? So I think this is a good article to limit it. 800 is a pretty good size. Being a local realtor, I would say that is pretty similar to a lot of the apartments that we have in town, mainly on Pleasant Street and School Street, that are 2-bedroom, and they are roughly that size. Thank you.
Thank you. On microphone number 2, please.
Scott Rogers, 26 Tomahawk Drive. Just a point of clarification, is there a difference between the motion that was read and the corrected information that's in the handout?
Was there, Lori?
Which motion should have been entered?
Yeah, the one that was read is correct.
And that matched then what was turned into the clerk? Okay, great. Just wanted to check.
Over here, microphone 1, please.
Hi. Susie Sislicka, 8 Emerson Road. I'm a member of the ZBA, but I'm speaking as a resident right now. I happened to watch the once-a-year municipal bylaw meeting today in preparation for tonight. I saw the non-discussion discussion of the of this very zoning bylaw, and I was wondering if we could find out why you decided to not support this. The planning board does. I do watch planning board meetings. I think you guys do an excellent job. You spend hours and hours and hours preparing for this, as our planner does, and Bob. Everybody puts a lot of work into this zoning code. and this is stuff that the state wants us to update. This isn't stuff that they're just pulling out of the hat or trying to make everybody's lives harder. It's trying to make our town better. They invite the zoning board to come to a meeting. We go to a meeting, we spend hours of our time weighing in on it. So, but I'm not giving my opinion on this very one, but I'm just telling you how much time is put into every one of these. And when this particular one came up and the vote was no, it was no. I don't like this one, no. So there was no discussion, and I was wondering, we're putting a lot of weight into it because we say the Municipal Code and Bylaw Committee, they're not recommending it, and the townspeople were all looking to that committee for their opinion, and I don't think we should give it a lot of weight in this instance because I know so many hours went into this. So maybe we weigh that right now, but if there is someone from the Municipal Code and Bylaw Committee that could get up and speak as to why that was a no, that would be great. I know Lori and Bob and the planning board and the hours that I spent myself in a meeting on that, and that previous zoning board members years back and all the past planning board members and all the time that we always spend leading up to a town meeting, whether or not I've ever agreed with stuff that come up, we deserve to know why something in 2 seconds would be a no. Thank you.
Microphone number 1, please.
Lisa Maselli, 13 Maple Street. I am in support of this article. I think that this will help an awful lot of families who may want to do an in-law apartment, and 800 square feet is it's a good size, but it's certainly not an overwhelming size, and I think that the town can certainly enjoy having their families more together with an option like this. Thank you.
Microphone 2, Megan.
Megan Robbins, 100 Weston Terrace. So I am a member of the Municipal Code and Bylaw Committee, so I'm taking your invitation to come and speak. We decided to vote against this because it would drastically decrease the amount of square footage that someone could have. If you are talking about a large home, it's 25% of that square footage, so it may be the size of a small house, but in comparison, it's still an accessory dwelling. Another thing that I was particularly concerned about as a social worker is I know a realtor had spoken about increasing children in the school system. There are currently families that are living in one house, one apartment. I know in Northborough, particularly in other places, if we had the availability, it's just, it really isn't going to cause more problems because those families are already here. They're already in the school system. So I just don't understand how it could increase the amount of children in the school system when those children are already here. They're just living in small apartments and small houses. And this would give people the opportunity to hopefully, if people build accessory dwellings, to reduce the housing crisis. Again, that's my opinion. The rest of the board, or the rest of the committee, really thought about it from the point of it is a small apartment, but if it's over a garage and the garage is more than 8,000 square feet, or it is then you couldn't build it. So, and say I just don't really, if these buildings are already there and already in place, then it doesn't make sense to change it if it hasn't currently been, if they're already there and it hasn't been an issue. So, thank you.
Microphone number 1, please.
Hi, John Wickstead. Sorry, John Wickstead, 2 Sturbrook Lane. Just a question. So the current regulation says that it's 25% maximum. So if you live in a 2,400 square foot house, then your maximum would be 600 square feet, presumably. So this actually could be substantially beneficial to people whose homes are less than 3,200 square feet, which I presume would be the majority of homes in Northborough. So if you live in a house that's 2,400 square feet, you could actually build an ADU that would be up to 800 square feet, which I'm sure if you were moving your mother-in-law in would, be helpful. An extra 200 square feet, substantially larger for homes that are substantially smaller.
That's true.
Thank you.
Microphone number 2, please.
I just wanted to clarify that the powers and duties of the Municipal Code and Bylaw Committee is to check to see if bylaws fit within the confines of our current bylaws and code and form. It's not to create personal opinion on zoning bylaws. This was brought forward by, I believe, the zoning enforcement officer as something that needed to be done in our bylaws. It's something that we had public hearings on. The people in charge of zoning thought this was a good, a positive bylaw for this town. I think the Municipal Code and Bylaw Committee should stay within the confines of what they've been charged with in our charter.
Can I just speak to the prior comment? I just wanted to clarify one point. Once again, my name is Laurie Connors. I'm the planning director. So I just wanted to specify that in the current zoning bylaw, there are actually 2 different measurements. So the maximum gross floor area of an accessory dwelling unit shall not exceed 25% of the gross floor area of the existing dwelling, or 700 square feet, whichever is greater. So if you have a small single-family home, so maybe you have a ranch, it's 1,200 square feet, then your accessory dwelling today can go up to 700 square feet. And then it's capped at 700 square feet. So you can't go above the 700 square feet unless you own a larger single-family home. So I just wanted to clarify that point. Current regulation. So the proposal is to eliminate those 2 measurements and just go with a flat 800 square feet. So if you were in a circumstance where you had a 2-car garage and you had a room above the garage, and maybe the space above the garage was 850 square feet, then you could go to the ZBA and you could ask for a dimensional variance in order to build up to the 850.
Any other discussion on Article 42? Yes. Microphone 2.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Aaron Hutchins, 91 Brigham. Things that exist today, which may or may not be in conformity with this new proposal, grandfathered in, or is that going to be a problem?
Correct.
So anything that currently exists today would be considered legal non-conforming. So they would be exempt from this requirement.
Yes, microphone number 1, please.
Hi, Edward Reese, 320 Howard Street. I'm just all around very confused by this article right now because, I'm hearing an argument, this is to prevent big second structures on a property. And then I'm hearing right now we can almost build something that's that size for a small house. So I'm hearing arguments, this is going to be great, this is going to let more people build on their property. Well, no, it's not, because they already can. And then I'm hearing arguments that, this is going to allow people to stay in the town, and something about apartments. Could we please just succinctly say, why is this a good thing for the town of Northborough? Because honestly, I'm just getting lost in the sauce and not understanding it.
So the rationale for this article is largely when the single-family home that is existing on the parcel is very large. So in a circumstance where the single-family home is 4,000 square feet or larger, so if, for example, you have a 6,000 square foot single-family home, and there are some in Northborough, in that circumstance, the size of the accessory dwelling would be 1,500 square feet, which is just slightly smaller than my 4-bedroom single-family home. So that is a very large single-family home. And our bylaw currently allows detached accessory dwellings. So in those circumstances, you would have the large single-family home as well as a smaller single-family home on the same parcel of land. So the intent of an accessory dwelling is to have it be truly accessory. So if you were to have a detached apartment, accessory dwelling, then usually it's an apartment above a two-car garage. It could be, if you live in a split level, it could be the first floor of the split level. It could be you have a barn and you want to section off a portion of the barn and do an apartment. So the point of the accessory dwelling is it should still look like an accessory structure. It shouldn't look like a single family. It should look like a garage.
So then why is this a problem? I mean, from my perspective, it increases the value of the lot, so you can tax more on it. That's more income for the city. And if it's still truly a one-family home, well, maybe the person can rent it out, then they're getting some income, then that's also more tax revenue for the city, for the town. So then why is this a problem?
If you don't see a problem, then you should vote the article down.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Stone on microphone 1.
Yeah, just again, I think the problem is that the bigger the house, as Lori said, you're going to have more occupants, and generally that's more children. And the cost to educate children outweighs the income that we receive in taxes.
Any further discussion or debate on Article 42? Hearing none, this is what we're voting on. I move the town vote to amend Part 7 of the Northborough Town Code, the Northborough zoning bylaw, Section 7-05-020, special permit with site plan approval, paragraph C4C, by deleting the text shown in strike-through and adding the text shown as underlined, as set forth in the warrant. This is also a 2/3 vote. All those in favor, please raise your cards. And those in opposition? I'm going to ask the tellers to step in. I'd rather do the tellers first to see how that works out. Yes. I'll go get her. You're in place? All those in favor of Article 42, please raise your cards, keep them up, and give the tellers a chance to count.
I got 11. Thank you, Rick.
I have 17. 17, thank you, Elaine. 8, thank you.
36.
And 36, thank you all.
Okay, all the cards down, please. Those in opposition to Article 42, please raise your cards.
I have 4.
4, thank you. 3, thank you. 8, thank you. 11. And 11, thank you very much.
I declare that Article 42 passes. The count was 72 yes, 26 no. Article 43, please.
Mr. Moderator, I make a motion to move the town vote to amend Part 7 of the Northborough Town Code, the Northborough zoning bylaw, Section 705020, classification of uses by deleting paragraph J2B3 and renumbering paragraph J2B4 as set forth in the warrant.
Motion has been seconded. May we have a presentation, please?
Okay. This article was recommended by staff to remove an antiquated bylaw of mixing a residential dwelling into an industrial site. It's remnant of early industrial times when a mill owner or foreman lived adjacent to a mill to reduce a commuting distance, oversee workers, and protect the mill from fire and theft. Modern conveniences such as telephone security cameras, sprinkler systems, and automobiles make this arrangement unnecessary. Many industrial uses, including manufacturing, warehousing, research and development uses, are incompatible with housing. Existing situations will be grandfathered, non-conforming, pre-existing uses. The planning board voted unanimously to approve this article.
Thank you. And my notes indicate that the Municipal Code and Bylaw Committee did unanimously voted in favor of this article, Article 43. Any discussion or debate on Article 43?
Mr. Moderator?
Yes.
Sorry. I just wanted to check to see if there's a typo correction that needs to be made. If you look at the clause that follows the one that's struck out, it shows deletion of number 4. I believe that one is now meant to be numbered 3. At least as shown in the warrant.
The number 3 is preserved on the prior line.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, you see that.
Number 3 is preserved from the prior line. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
A very quirky point of editing.
Okay, so we're all set there.
So we're good?
We're good.
Okay, no discussion, no debate. This is what we're voting on for Article 43. I move the town vote to amend Part 7 of the Northborough Town Code, the Northborough zoning bylaw, Section 7-05-020, classification of uses, by deleting paragraph J2B3 and renumbering paragraph J2B4 as set forth in the warrant. This is also a 2/3 vote. All those in favor, please raise your cards. And those in opposition. I declare that Article 43 passes by the required 2/3 vote. Article 44, zoning bylaw section 7-06-030, Table 2, Table of Density and Dimensional Regulations.
Mr. Moderator, I move the town vote to amend Part 7 of the Northborough Town Code, the Northborough zoning bylaw, Section 7-06-030, Table 2,
table of density and dimensional regulations by adding the text shown as underlined as set forth in the warrant.
Motion has been made and seconded. Thank you.
Okay. This is setting a limit on the maximum lot coverage in the 3 residential zones that currently don't have a maximum lot coverage. Right now, 100% of a lot could be covered by a structure such as a house, barn. Every other zone in the town has a limit, and surrounding towns also have maximum coverage limits. I'm going to read the thing. By adding a maximum lot coverage to the residential A, B, C, the town will be able to limit the amount of property that can be covered by the principal structures. This is a tool to limit development density. Driveways, parking areas, walkways, uncovered patios, and uncovered swimming pools are not included within this calculation, as they are not by definition structures. And I just wanted to point out right now, in our bylaws, under residential A and B, there are assisted living facilities and congregate housing allowed. So if this wasn't updated for maximum lot coverage, someone living in RA or RB, which is north of downtown for the most part, the bigger lots, could currently have an assisted living house proposed next to their house. The planning board recommended to unanimously to approve this article.
Thank you. And my notes indicate that the Municipal Code and Bylaw Committee voted not to support Article 44 as presented.
Yep, 2-1.
Any discussion or debate on Article 44? Mr. Stone.
Oh, yes, Doug Stone again, 33 Birch Hill. Just a question. Wasn't there a rule for maximum impervious cover that was something like 15%?
I don't know. Nope, not on residential. No, I'm told no. And if this 25% and 30%, it's really a big footprint. If you go to RC, which our smallest lot that this covers, 20,000 square feet. If you allow 30% lot coverage, that's a footprint of 6,000 square feet. You can go up 3 stories. So on a 20,000 square foot lot in residential C, you could build White Cliffs. So just to put that in perspective, it's not limiting to a small house.
Any other discussion or debate on Article 44? Hearing none, this is what we're voting on. I move the town vote to amend Part 7 of the Northborough Town Code, the Northborough zoning bylaw, Section 7-06-030, Table 2, Table of Density and Dimensional Regulations, by adding the text shown as underlined as set forth in the warrant. Again, a 2/3 vote. All those in favor, please raise your cards. And those in opposition. I declare that Article 44 passes by the required 2/3 vote. Article 45.
Mr. Moderator, I move the town vote to amend Part 7 of the Northborough Town Code, the Northborough zoning bylaw, Section 707-010, Groundwater Protection Overlay District, Paragraph C3, by adding the text shown as underlined as set forth in the warrant.
May I have a second? Thank you.
This is a housekeeping item that clarifies the minimum lot requirement for parcels and buildings straddling 2 or more groundwater protection areas. Location of buildings within the district is key for determining the minimum lot area requirements. If the building straddles 2 or more groundwater protection areas, the minimum lot area requirement for most restrictive groundwater protection area governs. No land area in a more restrictive groundwater protection area can satisfy the minimum lot area requirement for a less restrictive groundwater protection area. New clarifying language is consistent with long-standing interpretation of this zoning bylaw. The planning board voted unanimously to approve this motion.
And also, the Municipal Code and Bylaw Committee voted unanimously in support of this article. Any debate or discussion on Article 45? Hearing none, this is what we're voting on. I move the town vote to amend Part 7 of the Northborough Town Code, the Northborough zoning bylaw, Section 7-07-010, Groundwater Protection Overlay District, Paragraph C3, by adding the text shown as underlined, as set forth in the warrant. Again, a 2/3 vote. All those in favor, please raise your cards. And those in opposition? I declare that Article 45 has passed by the required 2/3 vote. Article 46, please. Zoning bylaw, Section 7-09-020. Motion by Mr. Pierce.
Mr. Moderator, I move the town vote to amend Part 7 of the Northborough Town Code, the Northborough zoning bylaw, Section 7-09-020, site design standard, by adding a new paragraph, C6, as set forth in the warrant.
Motion has been made and seconded. Mr. Pierce, if you will.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. This article requires new construction of all types and substantial non-residential additions, expansions, or reconstruction projects that trigger site plan review to place telephone, cable, and electrical services underground. Burying lines eliminates risk of power outages due to down lines, improves road safety by lessening chances of telephone pole strikes, and looks better aesthetically. This is a typical requirement in most central Massachusetts communities.
Thank you. May I have the recommendation from the planning board, please?
The planning board recommended to approve this unanimously.
Thank you. And the Municipal Code and Bylaw Committee voted unanimously in favor of Article 46 as presented. We have discussion on microphone 2, please.
Anne Marie Robinson, 254 Ball Street. What is, can you define substantial reconstructions of substantial additions?
It's an addition of 1,000 square feet or more. So single-family homes do not trigger site plan review ever. So single-family homes would not be held to this requirement. If a developer is building a new subdivision of single-family homes, then they would be required, because currently it's in our subdivision regs that all the utility lines need to be underground. So for substantial additions, so that would be for commercial, industrial, institutional uses. Multifamily homes, it could be like a new multifamily development that would be required to build entirely underground. Typical for commercial, industrial is that you still have telephone poles along the street, and that's fine. However, the wire would be forced underground into the building. So you wouldn't see the wire above the building. So that's what this means.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yes, again on microphone 2, please.
Mr. Moderator, Ken Pickard, 78 Whitney. So to go back to that comment, if we have an industrial commercial building and they're putting a substantial upgrade to the building in addition, you're going to require them to go underground?
It really does depend.
That doesn't say depends.
So if you're talking about like, there was most recently a project where they were proposing to do a 22,000 square foot addition, and it wasn't going to impact the wiring at all. So in that circumstance, they wouldn't be required.
But that doesn't say that. Right, you're just saying substantial non-residential additions are going to require this.
Okay, you're right. They would be required.
Thank you.
For point of clarification, did you say they would be required, or the, okay, so everyone could hear that, okay? Any other discussion or debate on Article 46? If not, this is what we're voting on. I move the town vote to amend Part 7 of the Northborough Town Code, the Northborough zoning bylaw, Section 7-09-020, Site Design Standards, by adding a new paragraph, C6, as set forth in the warrant. Again, a 2/3 vote. All those in favor, please raise your cards. And those in opposition. I declare that Article 46 has passed by the required 2/3 vote. Article 47.
Thank you,
Mr.
Mr.
Pierce.
Moderator. For the reading of this article, we're going to refer to the green sheets that are in the insert. Those are the correct language. Mr. Moderator, I move the town vote to amend Part 7 of the Northborough Town Code to the Northborough zoning bylaw, Section 7-09-030, off-street parking and loading by adding a new paragraph B1C, which reads, "No driveway shall be installed or expanded to within 5 feet of a side lot line."
May I have a second? Thank you. Mr. Pierce.
The new 5-foot side setback for driveways will provide open space for snow storage, drainage, plantings, and fencing. This is from the site, from the side of the property. So if there's a driveway in the middle of the property, or for a duplex, this won't be affected.
May I have the recommendation from the planning board, please?
The planning board recommended unanimously to approve this article.
And from the Municipal Code and Bylaw Committee, could we have the vote on that one? You have to use the microphone because people on the video can't hear you.
It was 2-1 in opposition.
In opposition, thank you. Discussion on microphone 1, please.
Hi there, Sarah Yulia Sobel, 16 Whitney Street. Does this article also include turnarounds in a driveway, or is it the straight part of the driveway?
This would be any impervious surface, so it would be any part of the driveway.
Okay. At our home, we have a turnaround in our driveway. We live on Whitney Street. It's a very busy street. We have a turnaround that has 0 clearance. It goes right up to our side lot line. If this were enacted, we wouldn't be able to have that adequate turnaround. We'd have to back onto Whitney Street. I'm sure that there are many homes in similar situations where you need a turnaround to safely enter the road, and this would actually limit your ability to do that. We also have neighbors who their driveway, they have a turnaround, a circular driveway, which also would be within this 5-foot range. They wouldn't have the ability to have cars parked in their driveway and be able to actually have cars being able to get past and circulate. We have no problems. We have a hedgerow in between. We have civil relationships with our neighbors. We have places for snow storage. And while I realize that we would be grandfathered in, we also have, my father lives with us. He has a vehicle. We have a middle schooler who will hopefully in a few years be driving. And we may get into the position where we need to expand our driveway simply to have another parking spot or to make our turnaround wider so that we can have multiple cars parked there overnight and in kind of a place where we can actually continue to back out. So I'm concerned that this is short-sighted and that there are multiple situations where the benefits of whether it's a turnaround or a slightly wider driveway far outweighs some of these concerns here, and that snow storage and drainage and plantings and fencing could be accomplished in a much smaller piece. It doesn't require 5 feet of clearance.
Again, microphone 1, please.
Ed Reese, 320 Howard Street. Similar to the last speaker, I am very concerned about this. Would this be triggered if, say, I were to be repaving my driveway? Because as we all know, driveways wear out.
No. No, I believe this is just for new driveways, correct?
And expanded.
Or expanding.
And how much is considered an expansion? Like, if I'm repaving my driveway and the paver says, oh, well, we need to go over another inch, is that an expansion? Or is it like, oh, if I wanted to add another parking spot, is that I mean, that would be an expansion.
That would be an expansion, yes.
What's the minimum to be considered an expansion?
Anything within the 5-foot setback.
Well, the thing is, there's less than 5 feet between my driveway and my neighbor's driveway, and that's the way the house was built. So, I'm concerned like that somebody might come by with a tape measure and say, oh, you expanded by an inch. So what is the minimum then?
There's no minimum. An expansion is an expansion.
Okay.
Yes, microphone number 1, please.
Hi, Jean Cahill, 1 Thayer Street. So I have a house that has what would be a non-conforming driveway, and I'm just wondering, given my house may eventually be a tear down, and someone may choose to build a bigger house there, would the existing driveway be considered non-conforming grandfathered in that scenario of a new house getting built in the place of an old replaced house?
What Bob said is that if they tear up the driveway and rebuild, then they would have to conform.
Microphone number 1, please.
Spencer Kennard, 14 Wilson Road. If you change how the driveway is constructed with the material, say if you switch from asphalt to brick or pavers, would that be considered new material? Or sorry, a new driveway?
Yes.
So would you be prohibited to do that if it was in the 5-foot?
You were within the 5 feet, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any other discussion or debate on Article 47? Yes, over here on microphone number 2, please.
Carl Prakashanti, 13 Alcott Drive. What's the current setback now for the driveway?
0. There isn't one.
Okay.
Microphone number 2, Mr. Hutchins.
I'll be brief, Mr. Moderator. I'm personally attacked by this article, like so many others. So, to be clear, if the property line's on the left and the right side of the driveway was expanded, that's not an issue, right? Because it's not encroaching on the left lot line. And if the driveway is within that 5-foot area currently, it's grandfathered, but if the materials change or if the driveway is expanded to some degree on that left side within that 5-foot radius or a zone, then that's going to be a non-conforming driveway, correct?
So if you have a conforming driveway currently, and you are interested in expanding your driveway into the 5-foot setback, then you would not be able to do so.
Well, I have a conforming driveway because you said that the setback is 0 currently, right? So the driveway conforms, but we're establishing the 5-foot. And the issue is now if that driveway, per the last comment, changes materials, for instance, that's a new driveway, and I'm within that new 5-foot setback, then that driveway is non-conforming.
So if you destroy the current driveway, so if you totally remove it,
But
then
put
you
it
would
back
have
in
to
the same
conform.
place with different materials.
Yeah, I mean, if you're just resurfacing your driveway, that's no problem. So say your driveway is on your lot line and you're just, resurfacing your driveway, then there's no problem. You're grandfathered, essentially. Yeah. If you have, say you're within the 2-foot side setback, say you're 2 feet from the side. Yeah. So you are non-conforming, and then you decide, I want to make my non-conforming worse because now I want to go totally to my lot line. That would not be allowed. So you would be grandfathered to the limit that you are currently non-conforming, but you wouldn't be able to become more non-conforming unless you sought relief from the ZBA. So that is always an avenue. That was my next question.
There is relief.
There is. So there may be circumstances like, for example, you have wetlands all along your frontage, and the only area that isn't wet is this small section that happens to abut an adjacent property. So you have no choice except to be within your 5-foot side setback. Then you would just seek relief from the ZBA. You would have a great argument for relief, and chances are you would get it.
Mr. Stone, is this new information?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's just unnecessary, really, and the idea is good when you're looking at the photo, but as previous people have stated, it's just, not working out, and it's requiring us to run around with tape measures and educate pavers, and I just think it's unnecessary. Thank you.
And microphone number 1.
Hi, I'm hearing two conflicting things. There was another person that came up and asked the very pointed question about if they replace their current asphalt driveway with pavers or bricks, so it's new materials, would that trigger, an examination from this new bylaw? And the answer was yes, it would. And even if it was the same size and in the same place, it would be a new driveway, it would be non-conforming, even though he was grandfathered in. Then I hear another speaker asking questions, and we're hearing that, oh yeah, so long as you're still in the same spot, then it's still grandfathered. So which is the correct story?
So the second speaker was talking about expanding their driveway. So they had a current driveway in this scenario that is 2 foot from the side setback, from the lot line. And they were interested in expanding the sidewalk. So you have an existing, driveway. You have an existing driveway, and then they want to add 2 feet more to their existing driveway. Then they wouldn't be able to do that unless they were getting relief from the ZBA to do that. So one of the major benefits of not having driveways on your lot line is, like, for example, snow storage. So if I was going to be snow blowing my driveway and I had a driveway that was on my property line, I would absolutely be storing my snow on my neighbor's property, because that would be convenient for me to do so for snow removal. So one of the benefits of having a little bit of an open space area is for drainage, and you know, you wouldn't have two driveways butting up against each other, creating 36 feet of pavement.
If you'll excuse me, I don't think anybody's arguing against that point, but I think the concern is a lot of people in this town, myself included, have driveways that under this new regulation would be non-conforming.
Right.
And this is setting up the groundwork for us to not be able to improve our driveways, such as by changing the materials. Like, I've got an asphalt driveway. By doing this bylaw, I would be forced to always have an asphalt driveway, even if some new, better material came along that's more environmentally friendly, maybe even like solar panels that can like give electricity to the house. I would not be allowed to do that because here and now somebody decided it would be a good idea for snow removal purposes. I could see if this went into effect for like new constructions, that would be fine. But having it affect everybody, that is just beyond me, and I just can't support this. Thank you.
Yeah. And there is always the option of the ZBA too, so.
Okay, this is what we're voting on for Article 47. I move the town vote to amend Part 7 of the Northborough Town Code, the Northborough zoning bylaw, Section 7-09-030, off-street parking and loading, by adding a new paragraph, B1C, which reads, "No driveway shall be installed or expanded to within 5 feet of a side lot line." This is a 2/3 vote. All those in favor, please raise your cards. And those in opposition, I declare that Article 47 does not pass. It failed to meet the 2/3 requirement. Article 48, zoning bylaw, Section 7-9-4040, signs, paragraph B, definitions. Mr. Pierce.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I move the town vote to amend Part 7 of the Northborough Town Code, the Northborough zoning bylaw, Section 7-09-040, signs, paragraph B, definitions, by adding the text shown as underlined as set forth in the warrant.
Thank you. Did I hear a second? Thank you.
This amendment provides definitions for internally and externally illuminated signs, which are both allowed in the town of Northborough. The planning board recommends approval of this warrant, of this article.
And the Municipal Code and Bylaw Committee also voted unanimously in favor of Article 48 as presented. Any discussion or debate on Article 48? Hearing none, this is what we will be voting on. I move the town vote to amend Part 7 of the Northborough Town Code, the Northborough zoning bylaw, Section 7-09-040, signs, paragraph B, definitions, by adding the text shown as underlined, as set forth in the warrant. Again, this is a 2/3 vote. All those in favor, please raise your cards. And those in opposition, I declare that Article 48 passes by the required 2/3 vote. Article 49, zoning bylaw 7-07-010, groundwater protection overlay district, paragraph C, 5, and D.
Hello, I'm Carrie Martinek. Mr. Moderator, I move the town vote to amend Part 7 of the Northborough Town Code, the Northborough zoning bylaw, Section 7-07-010, groundwater protection overlay district, paragraph C5 and D4, by deleting the text shown in strike-through and adding the text shown as underlined, as set forth in the warrant.
Motion has been made and seconded.
Okay, for this particular the planning board voted unanimously in favor of this. For this amendment, this particular one is about streamlining the permitting process for the groundwater protection special permits by eliminating the Groundwater Advisory Committee. And the reason for this is because primarily the boards that are the special permit granting authorities, which would be the planning board and the ZBA, really rely primarily on the town engineer, who's an expert in groundwater, to provide recommendations to the boards. So by having a separate committee, it forces people to go through this extra hoop. By the time they get to the permitting boards, they feel like they've already discussed their application, and they feel frustrated, they feel like they've gotten the runaround, and it's really created a process of very duplicative for people, and it's not a good experience for either the boards or the applicants. The boards and commissions who currently appoint members to the advisory committee can still review the application. So it's not really taking away the ability for other boards to review. It's really about streamlining this process. This will help to shorten the timeline for approval by eliminating that two-step process of appearing both before an advisory committee and the special permit granting authority. In having our special, in having our hearings, we had the benefit of having town council as part of our hearings, and what he also described to the board had to do with some of our appeals process. The other issue created by having this advisory committee is it signals a higher authority of experts, when really that's not the case with the Groundwater Advisory Committee. They're just appointed, so they're really not necessarily they're great volunteers, but they're not necessarily groundwater experts. So it puts us at a disadvantage if we have an appeals, if we have the case of an appeal, which we've had over the last couple of years, where it appears that an advisory committee had that expertise. We had to actually attest that they did not. It's just really a messy process that it isn't necessary, and a town this size shouldn't necessarily have to have that. We've looked around at other towns, and nobody else around us is really doing that. So this is to streamline that, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
What I will add also is that the Municipal Code and Bylaw Committee voted unanimously not to support Article 49 as presented. At microphone 2, please.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Scott Rogers, 26 Tomahawk Drive. Agree that the technical expertise lies with town staff. However, there's unique characteristics of the Groundwater Advisory Committee. It's one of the only committees in town that brings together the Select Board, the Water and Sewer Commission, Conservation Commission, Board of Health, along with the Planning Board, and by extension, as another special permit granting authority, the Zoning Board of Appeals. So those 6 committees are represented in the Groundwater Advisory Committee. They're not really bringing technical expertise in groundwater. What they're bringing to the table is their expertise in the disciplines that they represent in terms of public health, water and sewer management, wetlands protection, and the like, including the Select Board in terms of policy and financial management. So if this committee is dissolved, you do lose that connectivity and communication and coordination between those 6 very important boards and commissions. There's a practical aspect to this as well. Carrie, you mentioned that they still have an opportunity to comment on applications. And since this was proposed, I'm still trying to work through the scenario, the practicality of that capability. If it's a Tuesday night, Planning Board had their session, tomorrow morning, application comes into the ZBA involving groundwater. I know Lori's going to be on top of things, and she's going to make sure that all the members of the Planning Board get notified that a new application is in. Might take you a couple days individually to review that, but let's say day 3 or 4, Anthony finds something that really needs to be brought before the Planning Board and needs to then get that in front of the board in total. I assume he'd talk to you, get it on the agenda for the next meeting. Luckily, you meet normally twice a month, so that might be day 14 or so that you're able to convene and talk this over as a board and come up with questions that you might want to ask the applicant. You've got a short time window then with the 21 days to get your questions, I guess, submitted. I don't think you'd be able to work in the time to have the applicant come before you and answer those questions. So you're really going to be limited to just supplying questions or supplying comments to, in the case of this scenario, the ZBA is the permit granting authority. So I'm not sure that from a practical standpoint, the 21 days provides the ability for the others, boards and commissions, to make their comments. That's a practical standpoint. But really my main point is, and I'll end with that, is that you're losing the connectivity and the coordination and the communication between 6 very important boards and commissions within the town. So that's what you're losing. You're not putting the groundwater at additional risk. That's not a concern. You're just losing that communication between those boards and committees. Thanks.
So just to answer that, there's a very specific timeline for public hearings. It's not something you'd see come up before the board in just 2 weeks. There's a process of advertising, creating a public hearing, allowing for comments. All the public is actually allowed to come and comment, not just about boards in the town. I do think that it's important that we're aware of what we're doing as different boards, but it's really the purview of the special permit granting authority to be the ones that grant the permit and review the applications. It's not worth the extra step or worth the legal liability to infuse this separate process just to let boards have a say. Quite frankly, we often see that they don't say much at all. It really just comes down to agreeing what the town engineer has to say. One thing I've said to the planning board, I guess in a little bit of a joking manner, is that when I go to see a radiologist for an x-ray, I want the radiologist to give me the results. I don't want 5 people at random from the waiting room. I really want that expert. So that's what we're trying to accomplish here.
Microphone number 1, please.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Jason Perot, 27 Treetop Circle, member of the Board of Selectmen, but just speaking here individually, although it is informed by being a member of the board and by having served on the Groundwater Advisory Committee as that board's representative. One concern that I have is that in its current form, the members of the Groundwater Advisory Committee do have that opportunity to have the applicant in front of them to hear the presentation and to kind of formulate their questions directly to the applicant, and in some cases develop questions based on the applicant's presentation or responses. In the model that's being proposed here, the application is essentially forwarded to the separate boards and committees who have a 21-day opportunity to review that information and comment on it. But what I'm concerned about is how does that window of time align with the planning board or ZBA's hearing? And what opportunity do members of those boards and committees have to participate in the hearing, to have their questions asked and answered, and then use that feedback to formulate their input to the planning board or ZBA?
So any member of the public can come to the public hearings. Is it a question of whether or not you'd have the information?
It's a question of being able to ask questions of the applicant based on review of the application by those separate boards and committees. Currently, the Groundwater Advisory Committee has the applicant come in before them, hears the full presentation, and has an interaction with the applicant to get their questions answered. So, how do they participate?
Right. So I guess that's the problem we're trying to solve. There's no reason for the applicant to do that because the Groundwater Committee isn't really has the expertise to ask the right questions. It seems that what we're relying on is the town engineer, which they do meet with and speak with. They go to town staff. There's a meeting between staff. And that's really where we rely on the people that we hire in town to do the expert review. By sending them to another committee without expertise, it forces applicants who want to do business in our town to jump all these different hoops and make it a really frustrating process. So I guess what the planning board is saying, it's not really worth that. If there's a public hearing that you're welcome to attend and ask questions. And Laurie, could you please clarify the public hearing timeline? 65 days. I don't know where the 21 days is coming from. But in any case, there should be plenty of time for people to comment, look at the application, send in emails. It's not a way to exclude people from giving feedback. It's just making sure we get the experts looking at it and we streamline it for the people who want to do business in town.
I guess I'd just like to ask for clarification about the 21 days that I'm referring to is what is proposed in this change. To the bylaw.
I'm sorry. Yes. Okay. I thought you were referring to the public hearing process.
Does the clock run out on that before the hearing is even held and before the members of those boards and committees have an opportunity to participate in the hearing?
Gotcha. Laurie, how would that impact?
So this is mostly, the reason for the 21 days is because the ZBA often holds their public hearings within 35 days of receipt of an application. And then they often open the public hearing, close the public hearing the same night, and render a decision. So the 21 days is kind of a safeguard to ensure that you have the opportunity to express yourself. If the public hearing isn't going to be held until, say, day 35, and you submit comments on day 35, that's fine too. It's more, the 21 days is, if you submit your comments within 21 days, you're definitely going to be heard. If you submit comments on day 60 and the decision was rendered on day 35 or 31, then you missed the boat. So it's more of a safeguard. So advisory, 21 days.
Thank you.
We're going to stay over at microphone 1, please.
Hi, Amy Paretsky, 47 Indian Meadow Drive, but I'm also on the planning board, and I was on the groundwater review committee. I just wanted to note that all towns in Massachusetts, there are 351, and at one point, maybe a year or two ago, I did a search, and I could only find one other town, Sherburne, that had a groundwater committee. The way the other towns do it, or what we're submitting right today, the groundwater committee submits a review letter to the planning board and the ZBA, not to any other boards, to the special permit granting authority. So this will just streamline it, but it's the way every other town does it. It's not like we're trying to do something crazy here. And also, we reached out to the other boards. I went to the Water and Sewer Committee and met with them, and the people on that board were okay with dissolving it because they did agree to that Fred Litchfield, our town engineer, does the review letters, and we have faith in him and trust him, and if there's a really huge application, the planning board then can go to a peer review. And they were in agreement with that. And then the Conservation Committee actually took a vote, and 6-1 agreed to dissolve the Groundwater Committee, and they have a rep on that committee. And the ZBA came to our meeting in January. I don't think there was an official vote, but nobody had concerns in January with the ZBA. And it's the Groundwater Committee who reports to the Planning Board and the ZBA. So they're our advisory committee, and this is the agreement or the ideas that we came up with. And also we asked town council, and he did say that when there is an advisory committee to a special permit granting authority, they look at that as a board of experts. So if we do not have a board of groundwater experts on the groundwater committee, then it's just a duplicate committee of residents, and we thank them for their, for all their help. But it is misleading to applicants and to any judges if it should go to court. So he thought if we did keep the groundwater committee, that we should try to fill it with experts in groundwater, which is really hard to do. Thank you.
Microphone number 2, please.
I'll defer to Dr. Wexted.
Okay.
Sorry.
Microphone
John
number 1.
Wickstead, 2 Sturbrook. Thanks. You know, I have to say I completely agree with Scott. In an ideal world, having the boards and committees, which sometimes seem like they're separate silos, having them together and connected, there's value in that. Unfortunately, we live in a world where there are legal ramifications to that. And when the planning board, as the special permit granting authority, makes a decision, if it is different than the groundwater advisory committee, that puts them in a terrible position because now they have to legally justify why they are not paying attention to their special experts when their special experts aren't actually special experts. So although it would be great if the committees were all connected, unfortunately, in this situation, there are legal ramifications for having the groundwater advisory committee, which hurt the town. Thank you.
Microphone number 2.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Just to finish out the tally of the boards and commissions that voted on this item, Board of Health unanimously opposed this item, just to finish out that accounting. Although you said it as a joke, If you're looking for an opinion from the radiologist, I don't think the members of the Groundwater Advisory Committee are random people from the waiting room. I think they are hospital administration and other clinical expertise. That characterization is not quite accurate. What we bring to the committee is not groundwater expertise, and I'm a bit surprised by the confusion that the appointments from the different boards and commissions are somehow imbibed with groundwater expertise. What they bring to that committee is their expertise in the disciplines that they represent: policy and administration, public health, water and sewer management, wetlands protection, et cetera. I think it's a bit, muddies the water a bit about, muddies the water. Sorry, that was unintentional. But there should not be confusion about what that advisory committee represents, who's on it. It's quite clear. It's quite clear in the recommendations that are made to the Special Permit Granting Authority that these are additional conditions that should be placed on the applicant on the project should it be approved by the Permit Granting Authority. That's very clear in the ways that are made. There's been some history of confusion, but that history no longer exists. It's very clear what the purpose of the committee is.
Just to respond to that, I will say that if you get sued for malpractice and you say the health administrators read the report, I think you'd be in trouble. I also think that we've heard from our town council that it is confusing. It's confusing to the courts. And when we're paying for appeals and we don't have a case because we have an issue of a groundwater committee that's not of experts, then I think it's not confusing at all. It's what our town council has told us. So I think that's the advice that we should listen to.
Microphone number 1, please.
Liz Nasser, Fairway Drive. I just have a question. Given that it seems like Northborough has an extra level of red tape that a business would have to go through, has that been a deterrent? Like, have some businesses tried to, establish something here in town and just got so frustrated that they decided to go somewhere else where they didn't have this? Because it sounds like we're one of only 2 towns that have this extra layer of red tape. So has that actually happened, that we've lost potential tax revenue because someone just didn't want to deal with
That's
these
a
other
great
layers?
question. What I've seen personally, and I think that the rest of the board has observed as well, is we'll get applicants come in and they're so frustrated because they feel like they've already presented their whole case. They've already got approval, which they did not. It's not really legal approval at all. They get aggravated, they don't want to present the data to us, and it's created an environment that's not friendly to businesses. And if we want to be a business-friendly environment, we need to streamline these things the best that we can. There's really no reason for them to do these extra steps. I don't know if we've necessarily, Laurie, had anybody say, I'm not going to do it because of this, but we've certainly had applicants that it's been an unfortunate, right off the bat, they feel frustrated.
Right. We want to be business-friendly, and it sounds like this isn't along those lines.
It streamlines it for them, for sure.
Thanks.
I'm going to stay at microphone number 1, please.
Let me adjust. Susie Sislicka, 8 Emerson Road, member of the ZBA. I do want to comment as a member of the ZBA about the applicant's frustration when they come before us. They don't understand why they've had to present over and over again the same information. We do receive the groundwater letters sometimes the day of the hearing, and not any fault of their own, but sometimes it's because they're coming from so many people. So we get the information, we have to review it, but if I have the letter from the groundwater committee, and I also have sweet Fred right there, our expert, right on the call with us too, I'm gonna ask Fred. I'm a former real estate attorney. I'm gonna ask Fred. I'm an attorney. I want the expert that's in the room. And I believe that's how we all feel. We always ask and defer to Fred. Sometimes we can ask Scott. We can always, ask the head of our DPW if he has an expert opinion on different items as well. And I'm sure everyone that has volunteered their time for the Groundwater Committee, I want to thank you, because we're all volunteers in this town, and it's wonderful to do it. But I don't think that we need this. We've heard over and over again about how town staff is overworked, and we could free up some time. We could free up Fred's time. and put it to other good use. But these, I think they're just doing the same stuff that we end up doing in the meetings and going over in the same meetings. But you do see it on the applicants' faces because they don't understand why they're telling us the same information over and over again. I already told groundwater this. Why are we going over this again? So I'm in support of this as a resident, but thank you. Oh, and I also don't understand why the Municipal and Bylaw Committee would have voted this down when they should have just been looking at the language, but that's also my opinion on that. Thank you.
Microphone number 2, please.
Dario DeMar, 13 Fairway Drive. I'm an architect, and I've gone through a lot of permitting in Northborough and probably 40 other states and about 15 different countries. This is one of the worst I've ever seen. I did have a client go to Marlborough instead of Northborough. I have several clients now asking why we're doing this when we repeat it and repeat it. Fred does do a great job. He does have the knowledge, and I've never seen it before. And we've permitted it in New York City, Chicago, Anniston, Alabama, Bend, Oregon, and this is one of the worst processes I've ever seen. And it's whatever we can do to make it better. I'm 100% behind it, just to be more friendly to people. And I've had clients that are just beside themselves with what we do. And I've expressed that to the planning board and other people because I'm doing it every day live. Thank you.
And microphone number 1, please.
Doug Stone again, 33 Birch Hill. And yes, streamlining. I speak for all the builders in town. Hallelujah. But let's back up a minute here. A lot of people are probably wondering what is groundwater. And what the term is for builders, they call it in-ground water. There are 3 districts in town, groundwater districts. And the reason for that is that we have 3 or 4 wells in town for drinking water that aren't presently used, but they have constructed these districts that surround them. And the idea is to protect the aquifer and to recharge the aquifer, especially when they're building a house like a duplex, for instance. And the idea is to recharge the groundwater. And what a lot of people may not know is that just to build a duplex in groundwater, you've had to hire a registered civil engineer to design a system that recharges the water, and it has to be approved, yes, by these committees. So, as we're being told tonight, it's a redundancy, and it's not rocket science. We're recharging the groundwater, and we're taking reasonable steps that have already been done, taken into consideration by a licensed civil engineer. Thank you.
Final comment on microphone number 2, please.
Yeah, one. Greg Rudy, 28 Moore Lane. I'd just like to comment on what he said about the wells not being used. Well, that's true. A large portion of this town is not in a water supply district. We have our own wells. We don't need somebody building next door, draining the aquifer without the proper review and engineering work done. So while it may not be necessary for people who live in the water district, for us outside the water district, that's not the case. The other issue I just want to point out is that review is not always bad. It's actually pretty good in a lot of cases. To have all the power concentrated in one board, where those members are also not experts in the overall science of the structure, is not ideal. So external review, it can actually be very valuable. Thank you.
So that's a great point. I just want to point out one thing that Amy said, and I did not. Our town engineer is the first line of defense who will review these applications, but in the event of a large project or something significant, we have the ability to hire a peer review, which is a licensed expert groundwater third party that could also do reviews for us. So in the case where we need that, whether it's the ZBA or planning board, we have that opportunity. So there's never an instance where an expert wouldn't be reviewing this, whether you're in the district or not.
about to say too, that there's still a review.
Okay, thank you. So we've had the discussion and the debate on Article 49. This is what we're voting on. I move the town vote to amend Part 7 of the Northborough Town Code, the Northborough zoning bylaw, Section 7-07-010, Groundwater Protection Overlay District, paragraphs C5 and D4, by deleting the text shown as strike-through and adding the text shown as underlined, as set forth in the warrant. Again, this is a 2/3 vote. All those in favor of Article 49, please raise your cards. And those in opposition? I declare that Article 49 passes by the required 2/3 vote. Article 50, acceptance of Mass General Law, Chapter 39, Section 23D.
Mr. Moderator, I move the town vote to accept for all boards, committees, and commissions that hold adjudicatory hearings and applicable to adjudicatory hearings that commence after the date of acceptance, Chapter 39, Section 23D of the Massachusetts General Laws relative to allowing board, committee, and commission members to vote on matters subject to an adjudicatory hearing, even if the member has a single absence during a hearing process. So what this means, it's referred to loosely, or maybe not loosely, the Mullins.
Wait.
Sorry.
That was a motion. I didn't get a second.
Second.
Okay. If we can get the motion,
Yes.
and then we can have the presentation.
Okay. And the planning board voted unanimously for this. In this case, it allows for anyone on boards or committees, if you miss a meeting, you're still able to vote. You would need to then go back and read the minutes and testify that you have reviewed all the information. But it just gives a little bit of room, especially for those who have public hearings. If you miss a meeting, you can still vote. It can be difficult, especially for applicants as well, if a member isn't there. In some cases, you need a supermajority vote, so that requires a higher level. You need 4 out of 5 instead of the usual majority. It just makes it easier for anybody here on a board or committee. You're probably cheering on the inside that this could be the case, and I'm happy to answer any questions about it.
Any questions or debate on Article 50? Hearing none, this is what we're voting on. I move the town vote to accept for all boards, committees, and commissions that hold adjudicatory hearings and applicable to adjudicatory hearings that commence after the date of acceptance, Chapter 39, Section 23D of the Massachusetts General Laws, relative to allowing board, committee, and commission members to vote on matters subject to an adjudicatory hearing, even if the member has a single absence during that hearing process. This is a simple majority. All those in favor, please raise your cards. And those opposed? Article 50 passes. Before I ask for a motion, I want to thank the members of this town meeting. I think it was a very productive meeting and worthwhile. And let's go forward and enjoy what's left of this year and plan for next year. Now, may I have a motion
I
to
move
dissolve?
to adjourn.
No. May I have a motion to dissolve?
I move to dissolve.
Motion has been made and seconded. All those in favor, please raise your cards. This meeting is dissolved.